Season of Plunder may have introduced Arc 3.0 to the subclass ecosystem of Destiny 2, but Season of the Deep perfected it, at least in my eyes. What's up, world? EchoReaver here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showing off one of my current favorite builds to run, good old Stormcaller Warlock. The point of this build, and why it's so fun to me, is to be an ad-clear, ability-spamming monster, all thanks to the ludicrous amounts of ionic traces we produce. I mean, like, seriously, guys, it's insane. Before we take a look at this build, all I ask of you watching this right now is to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Highly recommend it, and I can't appreciate you more for doing so. The cornerstone exotic for this build is going to be the Fallen Sunstar Exotic Helmet. Fallen Sunstar's exotic perk, Ionic Conductor, states that ionic traces you create move faster and grant you additional ability energy. Nearby allies also gain ability energy when you collect an ionic trace. What this means is, with this helmet equipped, each ionic trace that we collect will grant us 25% to our grenade and melee ability, and a massive 30% to our rift. And if you're in a team situation, your teammates will get a nice 10% boost to all three of those aforementioned abilities, giving us a nice little support role. Our weapon of choice in the build is a classic from D2 Vanilla. You know it, you love it. It is the Coldheart Exotic Trace Rifle. With this, we have the ability to periodically create ionic traces with a combination of Cold Fusion, where dealing more damage will deal more damage the longer we remain on a target, and Longest Winter, which will create our ionic traces while in said high damage state. Now, let's take a closer look into the build, starting with our subclass setup. For our super, since we have a lot of ad clear potential already through our ability spamming as well as Coldheart, not discounting the fact that roaming supers like Stormtrance really just aren't that great in PvE, we're going to go ahead and pick Chaos Reach for our super of choice. This is a really good idea for single target damage on higher health targets, stuff like bosses or champions, particularly with the jolting lightning strike that we can produce with enough sustained damage on that target. Healing Rift is going to be our class ability for the build, since Empowering Rift really doesn't boost the viability of the build all that much, and because who doesn't love healing spam? For our melee, we're going to go with Ball Lightning. This one I like a little bit better than the Chain Lightning melee, mostly because it's a ranged melee, so I don't have to worry about being right up in my enemy's face to activate the chaining. So that's my thought process there. I know Ball Lightning has a little bit higher cooldown, but we're going to go with it. For grenades, you can do a couple of different options. It kind of just comes down to personal choice or your preference. Pulse grenades as well as storm grenades both put in some excellent work compared to most other choices, at least in PvE. I generally tend to go with pulse grenades, but you're of course free to use storm grenades if you prefer. But don't sleep on flashbang grenades if you're playing champion heavy content like GMs or Legend or Master Lost sectors. The ability to blind unstoppable champions with the grenade, as well as jolting overloads with a fragment that we'll talk about later in the build, cannot be overstated for team versatility and flexibility when it comes to that content. So feel free to swap to flashbang and try it out if you choose to, but again, only in champion heavy content. For our aspects, first up we have Electrostatic Mind. With this, defeating targets with arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded targets will create an ionic trace, and collecting any ionic trace will amplify you. This is absolutely 100% a staple on this build, and you'll be amplified pretty much on demand and at all times. Never take this off. Up next, we have Arc Soul, so whenever we place our rift down, we'll create a little buddy for us and anyone that walks through our rift, and while we're amplified, these little buddies will be supercharged and fire twice as fast, increasing the DPS and ad clear ability of them, also proccing Electrostatic Mind as it is an ability kill. I prefer this over Lightning Surge just because while Lightning Surge melee is fun, the Arc Souls are it just complements the build a lot better, plus it benefits the team by giving your teammates Arc Souls as well. So, for fragments, We're starting off with the Spark of Resistance. This will give us a nice 25% damage resistance as long as we're within 15 meters of at least 3 or more enemies, but the buff will fade after about 2 seconds. Luckily, this is kind of a set it and forget it kind of a fragment. You're going to be proccing it pretty much all the time. You don't have to worry about it. It's just going to be there. So that is not a bad thing to have. Up next, we have Spark of Magnitude, which is going to buff our Storm and Pulse Grenades from earlier. As I prefer Pulse Grenades, I'm not 100% sure how it buffs the Storm Nades, I will admit. But for Pulses, it'll give them an extra 2 Pulses. So instead of the normal 6 like you would get, you now get 8 Pulses of damage. Up next, we have Spark of Shock, which allows our grenades to jolt targets, so it's super nice for more ad clear, which is always good. Spreading that jolt around, plus the utility to stun overload champions with our grenade, as we mentioned before with the flashbangs, those are great. Last up, we have Spark of Beacons, which states that while we are amplified, Arc special weapon final blows create a blinding explosion. This directly feeds into our gameplay loop of abusing Cold Heart as much as we possibly can, but you can also feel free to swap this out with Spark of Discharge, which will have a chance to spawn ionic traces from any of your Arc weapon final blows, not just your Arc special weapons. You can use your heavies if you want. But we are going with Beacons for the blinding and just the fun of it. Now let's go over our mod setup for the build. In our helmet, we're starting with Special Ammo Finder. Since we want to use Cold Heart as much as we can, we're going to need all the special ammo we can find to feed it. We have double arc siphons so that we can create orbs from rapid arc weapon final blows, aka Cold Heart. And since we're running double, they're going to be more potent, giving us our chaos reach just a little bit faster. So that's always nice. On our gloves, we have firepower. Wait for it to load. Hi, console. We have firepower so that we can create orbs with our grenades, giving us another avenue to feed our super and give us armor charges. Momentum transfer is there to help reduce our melee cooldown whenever we cause damage with a grenade. Since we have less than ideal strength, the grenade spam will help us with that a whole lot. And speaking of grenade spam, we have a grenade kickstart. So whenever we throw our grenade, whenever we have stacks of armor charge, we'll get back some of our grenade energy by expending those charges. And as one of our main staples of our gameplay is throwing grenades, any help in reducing cooldown is welcome and appreciated. In our chest piece, we're going to be having Arc Reserves so that we can have additional ammo for Cold Heart on any Arc heavy weapon that we might throw onto the build at the same time. Otherwise, we're going to use the remaining spaces to slot in whatever type of damage resist we would need for whatever element of threat is currently active. So say right now I was running a Lost Sector earlier with Arc Threat, so we'd put on Arc Reserve or Arc Resistance, and then either Sniper, Melee Resist, or Concussive Dampener. Again, it's all just depending on what kind of content you are choosing to play. On our legs, we're going to have Recuperation, which will grant us a boost of 70 HP for whenever we pick up an Orb of Power, which I can personally attest to the efficacy of and the necessity of, almost honestly, because it comes in so much clutch. It is the definition of the difference between dying in an activity and living to tell the tale. So put this on, thank me later. Arc Scav is on here to give us more ammo per brick pickup, so that we can get Cold Heart up to max ammo a little bit faster than we normally would with a normal ammo brick. And last up, we have Stacks on Stacks, which is going to give us an extra armor charge whenever we pick up an Orb of Power. So this is going to help us keep Grenade Kickstart at higher levels of charge so that we can get more energy every time we throw our grenade. And last but not least, on our class item, We want to keep up with the ability cooldown game, so we're going to go with a bomber and an outreach, so that every time we cast our rift, we reduce the cooldown for our grenade and melee a little bit respectively. And we're going to round out the build with powerful attraction, which will automatically collect any orbs of power near us whenever we use our class ability, so it helps with proccing things like recuperation, as well as give us super energy and armor charges. Arc actually got a lot of love in terms of artifact perks this season, and you already know we're going to run them all. So Amped Up is going to give us an extra 5 seconds on our amplified timer, 20 seconds instead of the usual 15, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it's honestly a pretty decent buff if you were to ask me personally. I like just having that buff last a little longer. It kind of eases the pressure and you can reproc it really easily. Thunder's Retort is fantastic, as it gives us an extra 30% damage to our super, provided we're either critically wounded, if you like playing risky, or while you're amplified, which with this build, again, is going to be a near constant, so put that on 100%. Electric Armor is going to give you a massive 30% damage resistance boost while you're amplified. Comboing this with Spark of Resilience is 25% and Tier 10 Resilience's built-in 30% damage resist really just gives you a feeling of being a tanky boy. Gives you a lot of survivability this season, so you're really doing yourself a disservice by playing Arc and not selecting this mod. Shock and Awe is one of the really fun perks, which just states that while you're amplified, Arc Final Blows will summon a burst of lightning that damages and jolts targets. It does have a short enough cooldown, so you can't really truly abuse it. It's not going to continuously hit, but I just think it's a fun perk, and I don't see why you shouldn't run it. And Lightning Strikes Twice will give you increased grenade recharge after throwing an arc grenade, and Arc Final Blows extend the duration. So even if it's not a whole lot of recharge, 2 plus 2 does equal 4 when it comes to an ability spamming build. So you really just have to put it on and enjoy. And that's going to be all for the build, guys. I can't overstate just how much fun this build is. So go ahead and give it a try for yourself. Let me know what you think about it in the comments down below. Or if you have any builds that you think are really fun, go ahead and leave those down below too. You can find me on all my various social media platforms, all listed in the description down below. But that is it for me today, guys. I'm going to get up out of here. I hope you have a fantastic day, morning, night, whatever time it is for you. And I'll see you guys later.